Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I know Jake had a meeting he couldn't get out of, so he won't be joining us for this session. But I do want to welcome you, and we'll look at as far as the schedule and things. There's a couple announcements that we'll need to make regarding the schedule. And so this week we're going to look at the image acquisition available into Metamorph NX. What I would like also to remind you is that if you have questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A section. So there should be a panel, a little dialogue for Q&A that you can have displayed. So if you want to type in a question in there, I will address it either during the presentation or definitely afterwards. That way we'll have a queue of all the different questions available so I can make sure I don't miss anything with that. And the second thing to point out, as far as Jake mentioned, that the original flyer that he created didn't have March 22nd as a date for a training, but I'm able to actually have that date available now. So this is the proposed schedule, the way we'll finish out these webinars. So we're looking at image acquisition for today, then we're going to skip next week, and then the next 3 weeks after that, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th. So the 15th, we'll look at image analysis, just covering the basic measurements and the application modules. And then March 22nd, we'll look at the custom analysis available in Metamorph NX, and then we'll finish on the 29th with the automation, the scripting that's available in Metamorph NX. So that's the schedule coming up. So we will not have a webinar next week, and we'll start up again on the 15th and do the next 3 weeks after that. So this week, we're going to look at image acquisition. We'll go through the different modes. You have interactive mode, multidimensional mode, high-speed mode, which is the streaming mode, and then the target illumination that's available in Metamorph NX. So for acquisition, just a reminder from last week, as far as the hardware configuration is all done inside the application. So you're on the hardware setup tab is where you'll come in and configure your cameras. That's the camera setup. You do the install devices and load devices, which is the same dialogues that you've seen in Metamorph 7. And the thing to keep in mind is that Metamorph NX uses the same drivers that is available in Metamorph 7. So you have the stability of the drivers as well as the large number of different pieces of hardware that we support. And that is what is available in Metamorph NX. You also come in and set up your illumination settings and your magnification settings, these two options here, which then are the settings that you'll use for the acquisition. So you need to set those up first to have them available in the drop-down list when I get to show you the different ribbons for the different types of acquisition. You'll see where you come in and select the illumination and the magnification settings that you've created in the hardware setup. So the hardware setup has to be done first before you can start acquiring. And as with Metamorph 7, Metamorph NX has the ability to emulate hardware, so you can have a demonstration camera configured. You can have a Olympus IX microscope configured, as well as any other peripheral type of devices, and emulate all of that. So you can do laptop demos with Metamorph NX as if you were actually controlling the hardware. So you can set up illumination settings, magnification settings, and actually do some acquisitions within that. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like, because that's what we're dealing with today, as far as I don't have any hardware that I'm controlling right now. So it's all done through emulated devices. So to start acquiring, the first thing you do is go to the acquisition mode ribbon. So this is the acquisition mode, active context. And as you select the options that we have available here on the acquisition mode, that's going to change the mode active context and the ribbon that's associated with that active context. So as we choose multidimensional, this will change to mode multidimensional. Interactive, this will change to interactive. And the ribbon is different for the different modes that we have, because there are different controls that you're doing and configurations that you're doing, so they will be different. So that's how you determine. So first thing is you determine the type of acquisition you want to do, and that adjusts and changes the mode active context ribbon that's there. Next is the acquisition protocols. So this allows you the ability to both save and load protocol files. And you think of protocol files as state files from a multidimensional acquisition in Metamorph 7. So you would do the configuration on the ribbon for the mode. So we come in this case, it would be a target illumination. We set up our target illumination configurations the way we want it. Then we can come back here and do export protocol. So it'll save that out as a single file that we can load back in, and we won't have to do that configuration. We'll have that available to us. Same thing with multidimensional. So once you have it set up as far as the number of time points, the number of wavelengths, the number of stage positions, Z positions you're going to do acquire, you can save that out to a single file and then load that back in to do that same acquisition without having to reconfigure the ribbon again. So that's your import and export, which is your load and save files. The hardware settings, so any hardware settings that you may have created in the hardware setup active context ribbon will be available here. So it's a drop-down list of the hardware settings available. And then finally, as far as the camera channels, so depending on which camera you have available, there may be multiple channels that you can select, like an 8-bit channel or a 12 or 14, 16-bit channel options. So you can switch back and forth between those here. Additionally, if you have a monochrome and a color channel modes available for your cameras, you can choose that. The one thing that you can't do, which is kind of a follow-up question from, I believe, last week, was dual camera acquisition. So if you have two of the same cameras installed on the system, can you do like a side-by-side, so you select both cameras into a single image acquisition window? You don't have that ability, because that's where in the channel selection is where you would select that in Metamorph 7. It would be camera 1, camera 2, and both cameras. Well, in Metamorph NX, you don't have that ability to do dual camera acquisitions. Same thing with like image splitters. So if you're doing like a dual camera or a dual view type of configuration where you're basically splitting wavelengths across and illuminating half of the chip for one wavelength, the other half of the chip in the same field of view on both, the software doesn't have the ability to split those images, so all it would do is acquire one and be side by side. So you can't really control or use image splitters, wavelength splitters within Metamorph NX yet. So that's hardware settings. So now looking at the different acquisition modes, we'll run through these specifically, starting with the multidimensional mode. So these are a left to right workflow. So we'll start from the left-hand side of the ribbon, and we'll select the magnification. We'll set up the number of channels we want to acquire, assigning the wavelengths and the exposure times per channel. And then any shutters associated with that. So the shutter and the camera controls will be based on the active wavelength that I have selected. So if I click a snap right now, in this setting, it will be the DAPI image that gets snapped, and then I can click on the RFP and snap in and get an RFP image as a current image. Same thing with my live, so whichever the active wavelength I'm looking at I have selected will be what shows up here. You have your bend controls for the snap and for the live. And then your camera chip areas, so whether you're doing full chip or creating a sub-region within the camera area or controls here. The next options that you have available are stage, Z, and time series. And these both have, all three of them have checkboxes that you have to enable in order for that dimension to be acquired. So in this case, we're doing both we're doing a stage, a Z series, and a time series because all three are checked within the acquisition. So if I don't want to do a stage series, I just uncheck the box and this becomes grayed out, and then it's going to skip that aspect of the acquisition. So you would, for the stage series, you would click on this is a stage map, so it shows you kind of a reference of one stage position to another. So you can kind of see that as you were to acquire, you can see the relationship because it draws a connection between, so you can see that. So you can create your stage positions to be maybe a little more efficient for your stage moves by the map that's there. The next is your Z series option. So what this is the current position is the first box, the next box is the range, and then the final box is the step size for that acquisition. So this is a range around current acquisition that you would run. And then the next box is your focus, autofocus controls. If you're doing a software autofocus, you're setting up the configurations for that as far as the type of autofocus you're running, the algorithm you're doing, and the range that you want to do the autofocus over. Additionally, if you have a hardware autofocus control, there are those buttons will show up. So if I had a ZDC configured, the one-shot as well as the continuous autofocus options will show up in this section here as well. Okay, a couple questions. I believe as far as the split view, the question that Farad asked is that in the product roadmap. I'm assuming you're referring to the split view option. If not, Farad, why don't you go ahead and actually respond again for that. And then your other question, yeah, split view or dual view, I know it's been requested, but I can't really comment because I don't have access to that as far as what is available to, as far as what's being developed, so I don't have an answer for that. Now, the other question you had was, is there an option for a top and bottom setting for Z acquisition? Yes, there is, but it has to be done through a script, through a Python script, and I have one available that I can give to people that basically, when you run the script, it pops up a dialog, allows the users to start a live view, allows the users to adjust the focus to find the top position, they set that, adjust the focus to find the bottom position, they'll set that, and then it'll propagate the fields here of the midpoint, the range, and the step size for that, just based on running the script. So you have to run the script first before you come in and do the actual acquisition, but you can configure a top and bottom position values through the script. Okay, so time series is next. You choose the interval is how often, the duration is how long that you're wanting to run. Then you just click acquire, and it runs through the acquisition sequence that you have configured here. If you want to get into more depth, if several more controls available to you, that's with the configure option, and I'll show you that in Metamorph NX in a second. That's here. So I'll go through just as a general overview of the different acquisition modes, and then we'll get into the application, and I'll show you more specifically how to do those configurations in the ribbons. So the next option is your high-speed mode. This is the stream acquisition mode that's available in Metamorph NX. So again, left to right workflow, select the magnification objective you're wanting to use for the acquisition. You select the illumination. So this is a single wavelength acquisition, so it's just a standard stream. We don't have device streaming available in Metamorph NX yet. So you're setting just a single illumination setting for the acquisition. You can do open the shutter, snap the image, do a live, so your camera controls are there, as well as your chip area, so full chip, or you click create a rectangle region, you'll be able to put a region on the active image and then use current region for that to do a subregion that's there. So you set the number of time points, which is basically the number of frames that you want to acquire, and based on the exposure time, it'll show you the duration of the acquisition that you're doing. And then the mode on whether you want to stream to RAM or stream to hard drive is available here, and then you just click acquire. And again, the configure option allows you to come in and do some more customizations for the channels, the camera, and so forth that's there. Target illumination, this is being able to do either FRAP or photo activation. So this is the target illumination. So Metamorph 7 had a target illumination dialog, so now it's in the ribbon here in Metamorph NX. Again, left to right workflow. So you start with the magnification setting. Your snaps and your lives allows you to set up and do a couple acquisitions based on the current. So the channel series, you can specify the number of channels you want to acquire, and then the illumination settings associated with that. The calibration is a kind of a wizard, so it's a step sequence of things that you would have to configure, and also to be able to set up the calibration to knowing the positions of the laser as it moves in reference to the field of view to your camera, so it will know where to move. So it also helps you with the orientation of the camera. So if it's 90 degrees or 180 degrees to your stage, you can now, through the calibration process, map the laser position to your field of view. So you have to do that before you can do any acquisitions. And I'll show you what that dialog looks like. I can't really do a acquisition with this in a demo mode because you do need real images and real feedback from those images in order to do the calibration and the pulse the acquisition type. So the targets allows you to set the areas you want to project the laser onto. The duration is the length of time that the pulse is going to be exposed. And then you set up your activity as far as the acquisition sequence. The interval is how often you want to acquire, the number of time points, so calculate the duration from that. And then you specify at which time points you want the pulse. And again, the pulse is configured here, will come during the acquisition. So you can set the duration of how long the pulse exposes, but you also set the time point in which that event will happen there. You just click acquire and you're ready to go. So let me switch over to Metamorph NX and we'll kind of work through the different modes of acquisition that we have here. The one I didn't point out yet in the PowerPoint, but we'll kind of cover, is our image interactive mode, because the interactive mode is kind of the basic mode of operation. So you're manually moving the stage around to a new field of view. You can do multiple wavelengths, but you're not going to be doing multiple time points or multiple Z positions, and you're manually selecting your field of view in this case. So it's just kind of more of a survey type of general approach for doing basic imaging. So you set the magnification you're wanting to use, you set the number of channels, and to add a channel, if you click on a box, you'll get the add channel option, which will add it to the list. You can also remove a channel here, so I can remove one or add one. Then when I get to the add, I come in and select it, and then I select illumination setting. I set my exposure time. That's there. And that way, if I do a snap, now I've just acquired at that wavelength, and if I select my RFP and do a snap, I've acquired that. If I select my GFP and do a snap, I've collected that wavelength as well. So now I've got my 3 wavelengths that's there. Camera area, so I can choose if I want to use a smaller area. I use the create rectangular region, do my spot, and then use the current region option, and now I'm only imaging that portion of the chip, or I can go back to full chip. That's there. The save options, the save as individuals versus save into groups. The save as individuals will create a new data set. And so when I've created this and hit save, it's going to add a new data set. So notice now my data set views, initially I had 2, now I have a 3rd one in this list that's there. If I come in and do another series of snaps, so snap my green, snap my red, and snap my blue, now I have another set of 3. And if I do save into groups, I can add it to my data set, and it's going to add it as a new stage position. So currently, my data set 1, this option here, only has, if I go to the Home tab here, only has a single stage position. There's your data sets here, so it only has a single stage position. But if now I use to save into groups and save it to the data set, to data set 1 here, hit save into groups. Now when I go back, should have snap that again just to on here. But it should save it into the same data set as a new stage position. So that's the interactive mode. Okay. Multidimensional mode. So again, it's a left to right workflow. Select your objective, set the number of channels. So you click on the box, hit add channel. We'll do, say, a 4 wavelength. We'll come in and do our blue or green, our red, and our DIC. Share. So I can just do like a single snap of, say, my DIC. So I'm just looking at that image if I want. I can also do a live to see the updating that's there. And then I would come in and now start my stage, my Z, and my time. So if I click on the stage map, if I change my positions to hit the plus, so I've just added it. Now if I add a second position of so that's my 3 wavelengths, and if I double click, I'm moving the current point. And as it's acquiring, this map will update to show you kind of what the current stage position is there. So you can see in relation to each other what the different stage positions are, so you can kind of potentially set the list so it's much more efficient on how it's moving the stage for you. So your Z-series acquisition, as I mentioned before, it's a range around current. So it's doing a range of 10, 2 microns each step. So we're looking at 5 acquisitions, so half above, half below, at 2 micron steps for that. Then we would set the time series. So the interval is how often, the duration is how long. So we're acquiring 1 a second for 5 seconds is the acquisition sequence that we're doing. So if I hit acquire, it's going to come in and start the acquisition, and I can easily see from the latest image tab the acquire as it's going along. One of the things that I didn't point out last week as far as your displays, these tabs displays you can easily click back and forth between, but if you were to left mouse click on a tab and drag it to the center, you can reposition your views based on that. So now I have just the normal data sets on this side and the current acquisition I got going on split over here on this side. So you can easily adjust your field of views by taking the tab, left mouse clicking and drag it to the center and choosing how you want to display. Additionally, I can take the tab and bring it back and put it back in the list over here, kind of sort the order, maybe where you want it in that view. So it just cycles through. While it's acquiring, you can see the current status as far as which time point, which stage position, which Z is being currently acquired. And then it came in and now created a new data set based on that acquisition. So these are our 4 different channels we have: blue, green, red, and DIC in our current display. Additionally, if I wanted to have more control on certain things, that's what the configure option gives you. So if you expand out the time, I can add a second time series. So if I wanted to do every 2 seconds for, say, 1 minute. Oops. Change that to every 2 seconds for 1 minute. I can add a second time series, so to acquire the first one and then acquire the second one right after that. So you can add multiple time series to your acquisition. Stage series, so this allows you to edit the position specifically. I can also add a new line for that. I can give it, adjust the labels of what they're called. I can actually go to those positions here. Then additionally, if I had, say, a ZDC configured on the system, I can set up an offset for each stage position by the Set Focus button over here on the list. So that's how you would set up a different offset for each stage position, is through the configure control in the stage series. Z-series, the only additional option that you get here versus what shows up in the ribbon configuration is a loop within channel. And what that means is that if it's not checked, it's going to go to Z position 1 and then acquire wavelength 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go to Z position 2, acquire wavelength 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you use a loop within channel, it's going to go to wavelength 1, acquire all the Z's, then wavelength 2, acquire all the Z's, then wavelength 3, and so forth. So that's the different options, whether it's checked or not checked. Your autofocus control, so this is the software autofocus configurations. So if you're going to do a hardware control, there'll be a different option for the ZDC. So the autofocus option here is for the software-based autofocusing. Actions allows you to set up specific actions to happen during the acquisition, go to a different field of view, or things of that nature. To be honest, I've never really played around with actions too much, so I can't comment. If you go to the help file, it may have a little more definition about what the actions do. That's there. Camera settings, these are like the special tab configurations that are in Metamorph 7. So the transfer speed, the gain settings, the trigger modes, and so forth are all would all be configured here. You can assign them to be per channel. So in this case, I have the gain set per channel. So if I look now at the box up here, I have a gain control for each individual channel. So I have the option of making that setting per channel instead of globally through the camera settings. And then the channel settings, this is where I would come in and set up my exposure time and gain settings, because I've set the channel or the camera settings to be per channel for the gain. My illumination settings, I can configure my auto expose. And then when I do auto expose, this is where you set up the target intensity, which is what it acquires. Keep snapping pictures, adjusting the exposure time until it reaches that target intensity. So this is where you would configure the target intensity for doing an auto expose. So the auto expose button I use here works off of that target intensity you have configured here. So you may need to adjust that even just to use this auto expose in the ribbon itself. Additionally, you can set as far as doing acquisition frequency of every time point, or every the first time point, first and last, or every nth time point options that you have configured there. And then you can exit and import acquisition protocol files from the buttons here, which is the same as in the acquisition mode at the top. So once you have things configured and you're wanting to do another acquisition, you just hit acquire, and you're ready to go. So starting the acquisition. And additionally, because I'm doing the acquire, so we can see it's running through that acquisition sequence. And as I mentioned before, how Metamorph NX is much more responsive. So now I can come in, if I have another data set that I may want to analyze, if I go to the Measure tab, I can actually come in and actually do a region measurement on this data set while I'm still acquiring. You can see the progress down below for the acquisition sequence is going on. So I can do some analysis on some other data sets that I have acquired while I'm running through a new experiment acquisition. So I don't have to wait for this to end before I can do something on a previously acquired data set. So that is definitely pretty nice, having that ability to multitask a little bit and not just freeze the system while the acquisition is going on. Okay, so I'm going to stop this because we really don't need to go beyond that. So high-speed acquisition. Again, left to right workflow, we set up the exposure time, the magnification setting we wanted to use, the illumination that we're doing. This is where we set the exposure time for that illumination. We set, you can do a live or a quick snap just to look at the pictures, make sure things are focused and so forth. You set your camera area you're working with. Then you set the number of time points as the number of frames you want to acquire in this case. Then it'll calculate more or less the duration of how long it's going to do that acquisition, take to do that acquisition. The mode is stream to RAM, and then you hit acquire and it goes. The demonstration driver, for some reason, is not designated as being able to do a stream. So if I hit the acquire button, I'm going to get an error message that pops up saying it can't do the stream for that. But for a regular camera, you'll be able to do the stream acquisition with it. Then the final mode is our target illumination. So this has a left to right workflow. Again, so selecting the magnification setting, we can do some snaps for that. We can come in and do the acquisition we're wanting for the wavelength. And then additionally, for some of these options to actually show up and be able to utilize, you have to do the calibration initially. So when you click on the calibration, it has more or less the wizard, a step approach for your configurations. So you set the illumination, which was our GFP, you set our magnification, and then we can adjust our exposure time. Then the set illumination for the pulse, so you have to have illumination setting configured to turn on your lasers and do the expose for the laser aspect of it. So that's the setting you use here. Then you're running through the calibration area. So this is when you hit the calibrate, it's going to come in and looking for a percent maximum range to fit within a defined area for your field of view. And then you're configuring the number of pulses and the duration, so how long of a pulse it needs to be able to find the spots and so forth. Again, because I don't have a laser set up, hardware set up, I can't really do the calibration. But at least you can see the sequence that's here. Then now that gives you, once you've identified the illumination setting for the pulse, now you have the pulse icon shows up here. So that's the calibration that's done. Then you can do a snap and define your areas of that you want to illuminate with the laser to do photo activation or photo bleaching, those spots. The duration is how long it's going to expose in that area, and then the number of pulses repeating that exposure a set number of times. Then I come in and do my activity as far as I set my interval is how often I want to acquire, the number of time points I want to do, and then it calculates the duration from that. Then I set as far as what time point I'm actually going to do the pulse for the FRAP or the photo activation that's there. Then click acquire, and it goes through the acquisition sequence for you. Okay, so that is all I have available for the acquisition. In 2 weeks, when we do the image analysis, I'm going to have some sample data images for you guys to use, as well as some exercises to be able to do like take-home homework stuff. But this week, I don't have any exercises for you. The only thing I can recommend is making sure you have installed Metamorph, so you can run through last week's presentation for that to do the install onto your laptops. You can configure hardware to emulate, so you can actually have some fake hardware available to you, and then just run through some of the different acquisition modes that are available for that, and just play around with those settings and controls. And then as I said, in 2 weeks, I'll have images and some more formal exercises for you guys to run through for the actual analysis portion of that. The presentations are being recorded, so they will be available. I'll send the links to Jake, allowing you to be able to download and view them at a later time. So if you need to review some stuff, you will have those available. So I'd like to go ahead and open it up to any questions. So Willie mentions he's tried and repeated several times to download NX, getting FTP errors. I don't have a comment on that other than it's possibly the internet connection that you have. I don't know if Jake may be able to post on to Olympus's FTP site or download page section to be able to download the CD. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks. So have a good weekend.